Hi everyone, welcome to our Mastering Mock Exam with Mental Resilience webinar. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day today to join us to talk over the mock exams and the stress that's related to that and everything that comes with it. I'm sure we've all been through it. We understand how stressful it can be. And we just wanted to give some useful insight onto how we can help our students go through these times of extreme stress and anxiety, and how resilience can really help them through this mock exam period and in obviously their real exams as well. So just to give you a bit of an overview on what we're running through today. So we will be talking a lot about resilience and how that can help students during their mock exam season, effective study and preparation techniques, how good preparation can reduce anxiety, and motivation and goal setting. We will also have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. However, if you do have any questions at any point in the webinar, please do put it in the chat bot. It will only be available and visible for the co-host and host to view it, so nobody else will be able to see your questions. And if you have any questions that you need us to cover while we're running through the slides, please put them in, and don't worry, we will cover them at some point. So without further ado, over to you, Silja.
Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for being here today. There is going to be a question popping up with a poll. So please share with us what you think resilience is before we get going. So I'm Silja Litvin. I'm a clinical psychologist and founder of Psychologist, a company that has built an evidence-based mobile mental health game for young adults. And the reason that I did that was because I was working with an NHS priority for mood and eating disorders for young adults, and was really shocked to meet young people who had been waiting over 9 months to see me, and who had had the first experiences of mental illness, experienced the first symptoms years before that. And I realized that I didn't want to dedicate my life to healing people more than I wanted to dedicate my life to keeping people healthy. And that is all about resilience, and it's about prevention. And today, I think this might be in a strange little way, you might be actually the wrong audience, because that fact that you're here today and you're taking time out of your day to be able to go through this to help your students be able to deal with mock exams better probably means that you're in that percentile of teachers, tutors, leaders, educators that really care and are already doing much more than the average. So it's kind of like putting the cherry on top of a beautiful sundae. But what I want to be able for you to go home with is to have some tools or have some ideas that you haven't had before, because you've probably been there, you've tried them, you've read up on things that can just help your young adults and teenagers cope better with mock exams, because it's extremely stressful and life in itself is very hard for young adults, and we just want to make sure that they get through it coming out more resilient. And how that would work, we're going to talk about, or I'm going to talk about today. Thank you. Next slide, please.
Just before the slide, we've just hosted and launched a poll for everyone to answer. If they could just take a second to answer that would be great.
Okay, I'm participating as well. Excuse me.
Great, thank you so much. So we did ask the question of what is resilience, and our options were ignoring problems, which none of you have answered, being tough, which also none of you have answered, and you've all answered correctly by saying bouncing back from hardship. And Silja will be covering this later on in the webinar.
And this kind of confirms my point that there's nobody sitting here who doesn't know what resilience is. But I hope that I will be telling you one or the other new thing, and that there's something that you can take away and take home and be able to help your young adults with. So as you all properly polled, resilience is the ability to bounce back. It's practically that you have a baseline well-being that is hopefully very high, and then an adverse life event happens, or a traumatic event happens that puts your well-being significantly lower, and you having the skills to be able to get back to your baseline or even above that is practically what we call resilience. And back in the days, it was thought that it's a trait, a personality trait, and personality traits are something you're born with, so it's not something you can learn. But thankfully, we found out through a lot of research in the last 10, 15 years that resilience is something that you can learn, you can build, you can adjust, and it's actually quite easy. Some of the prevention interventions that we do are a lot of, oh, that makes sense, and not, I'm learning something that's completely blowing my mind. It's about implementation in the right time, understanding the structures, and just having a little bit more of a direction of what you need to put in place and where in order to build your resilience. So it's a learnable skill, and you can see the impact of resilience on people's well-being and how their resilience builds up within days. It's really, really powerful. And one of the fun facts that I think is beautiful about resilience is that knowing that your resilience and having translated your ability, your resiliency into the terminology and recognizing that you are resilient makes you more resilient. So, if I can survive this or I can survive that, it makes me resilient. And that means that I will survive anything that comes my way. And that is practically a human superpower. And then, since the topic is about exams, and when you have an exam, of course, there's a possibility of failure, I would like to put out there that failure will always be the best teacher, because when you have an adverse life event like a failure, you don't get through mock exams, or you have to go repeat a semester, or you have to repeat a class or something like that, knowing that you have acquired skills along the way and that now you can implement them to do it better the next time is a beautiful opportunity. It's not the end of times. It's not a catastrophe. It's an opportunity, even if it feels really bad at the moment. And that mindset is something that I really want for you to be able to share with the students, because they put themselves under so much pressure sometimes and have such high expectations, and their families may do as well. We say actually failure is a friend. It's an opportunity to learn, and it's an opportunity to learn more resilience and implement resilience in your life. So here we have a little bit of a graph to be able to see what resilience would look like. And you have your mental well-being baseline that everybody has, and it's more or less high. And there will be a trigger event that plummets you into a very bad place. It can be all kinds of things. And during exam season, it's often failing mock exams. So they fail the mock exam and then they think, okay, I'm not going to be able to do the real exams. Instead of saying, okay, I have a list of things I did that might not be helpful, or now I know what I can do better, or I know where I can, where I need to improve myself. And in the last 10, 15 years, we have seen a shift going from bouncing back to practically struggling, as you see on the dotted line. So a lot less of young adults are bouncing back to their original baseline than before, and they go into struggling. And the struggling could be all kinds of things, but in many, many cases, it is mental illness. So we're looking at depression, we're looking at anxiety, burnout, and many other mental illnesses that are out there. Anxiety and depression being the two most widespread disorders within a young age group. Usually the first symptoms of anxiety and depression occur anywhere between 15 and 25. And that is the latest that young adults should have tools to be able to build their resilience, because then something's going to happen and then they might not get out of that dip of mental unwellness or even mental illness by themselves. Now, the power of resilience, and I have many a story that I've experienced it myself, is that when you come out of the struggle and you have been able to learn and implement resilience skills, you may very well get out of a higher baseline, a curve that's not even shown here, is because you understand how strong you are, you understand how resilient you are, and you understand that many of the skills are transferable. So if you manage to overcome a heartbreak of your first love, you will be able to survive maybe the passing of a pet, or you may be able to survive losing a job, or anything that is similarly emotionally draining. So that just puts you in a position of power and self-efficacy and autonomy that young people need to be healthy individuals. So this is why resilience is so, so important. When we're looking at specifically mock exams, there are a couple of very common challenges that you experience with your young adults or your teens or your students, let's just say students, on a regular basis. And that is mostly test anxiety. Between 20 and 40% of young adults have test anxiety. So they're absolutely fine until the exam or the night before an exam, then they don't sleep well, then they come up there, they have the shakes. And that does have an impact on their performance and, of course, their well being over that time. 33% of young adults these days are experiencing anxiety disorder. So they are living with anxiety. And a lot of the symptoms of anxiety come with things like lack of motivation, cognitive impairment, irritability, all things that do not help people, students, be able to study. Then there is the problem with self doubt. So they haven't built up the knowledge that they are able to do things and that they will overcome a challenge and that they will make their way through it. And even if they were to fail all the way, not just the mock exams, but the exams that they are able to repeat or maybe to find another pathway in their lives that they will be similarly or even more happy with. And that is a sign of low self-efficacy, which has a huge impact on well-being and mental health. And then, of course, the fear of blanking out. That they sit there, they read a question, and they know that they know it, but it's just not there. And that is because uh, anxiety is practically having an impact on their cognitive abilities. These are things that I'm sure you've heard of before. You've experienced it with your students, but I think there are many things because the experience of anxiety, fear, and just the general experience of being a student is so vastly different, and it's such a personal thing. If you're preparing for the mock exams, I think that communication is absolutely key because they might have challenges that you would have never thought of. And a lot of the times, individuals think that they have an issue that only they have. And so if you open the floor and you ask them, okay, what is the challenges? What are you struggling with? And somebody says, I'm scared, I'm going to miss the bus and not be there for the mock exam. And then two other people say, oh my God, that's exactly the same thing that I'm scared about. You wouldn't have thought about it because you're not a student anymore. So you're not going through that process. But they are. And then there would be a way to put a strategy in place, maybe even like travel buddies or something like that for that day that would take an unnecessary anxiety away. So communication is really important. Sitting down and say, okay, what are you guys struggling with? What are your challenges? And then, of course, sharing about yourself, your own vulnerability, because many times there's a disconnect between tutors and students, and the students say, oh yeah, you know it all, you've got all that information, that's why you're a teacher, you couldn't even know what it's like to be. But we all have stories about how vulnerable we were, how scared we were, how we failed, how we repeated a class, or why did I study 10 10 semesters instead of 6, and then share how you overcame it, how with skills you took away from it, and then allow other people to be vulnerable. And that information is key for being able to handle all the anxiety around things like mock exams. So, as I just mentioned, typical symptoms for general anxiety, and not performance anxiety, not test anxiety, but general anxiety, is cognitive impairment. So you won't be able to concentrate as much, you won't be able to process information as well, and you won't be able to remember as well if you are struggling with anxiety and also depression. These are just common symptoms, and there are a bunch of other symptoms that come along with it that young adults just do not have the psychoeducation to be aware that that is anxiety. They might feel a certain way and think something's wrong with them, or that it's normal, or that they will attribute it to something vastly different. Whereas if you explain to them what anxiety is, what the symptoms are, what it feels like, and what to expect, that they'll be go, oh, it's anxiety. And then one of the things we also teach is that don't trust everything that your brain tells you. Like if you think that you're going to absolutely fail, you don't have to believe your brain, right? And if you know that it's anxiety and that's a typical thought that would happen during test anxiety, then you can challenge that thought pattern, which is practically an exercise for cognitive behavioral therapy. So effects of anxiety on performance is when the students are really, really scared, they will have alarming physical sensations that will distract them from the task at hand, which is the mock exam. So I don't know if you have the shakes. Every time I present in front of real life people, I'm like, oh, my paper shakes, and I have to read very carefully. Heart racing, dry mouth, breathing issues, not being able to sleep, many things like that. And be able to discuss it, say, this is what anxiety is, this is what anxiety feels like, is something that helps them understand that their body's not going crazy, their mind is not going crazy. It is something to expect. Blanking out, as discussed, strong feelings of anxiety can distort the pathway. So the amygdala, which is practically the fear response, is overtaking the prefrontal cortex, which is the logical part of the brain. And you have that fear or flight response, and that will stop you from thinking and being able to access the things that you've learned the night before and you know very well that you know. So blanking out and then having exercises to counter that blanking out is a powerful tool for young adults. Fraction thoughts, so skipping through the questionnaires, like starting with question 1, skipping through reading the second part of question 2, and everything is very typical because it's practically the same thing, the flight or fight, and you can't concentrate on the things that you want to. And brain fog is as well a symptom. So it's not so much that you can't concentrate, you're just kind of like stuck in nothingness and you just feel anxiety. So this is something that students are dealing with the days before and during mock exams, and being able to understand that they can expect that it's normal and have the tools to kind of counter that is going to be extremely effective. And of course, if you're going through all these things, that's going to have an effect on your grade. And it's quite interesting because grades can be predicted by how anxious students are when they are taking the exam. And self-efficacy actually predicts test anxiety. So it's kind of like, a vicious cycle. And if you break that down and you say you help them gain more self-efficacy, then they'll lower their test anxiety and they'll get better grades. So it's all interlinked together. And it's really important that they realize what anxiety feels like and then has the tools to kind of counter that. Building a resilient mindset. So when you are preparing for the exams, I think it's very important, of course, to see what do the exams look like, what other topics we're going through, maybe doing pre-tests and things like that. But maybe also do a workshop about the resilient or mental health or the mindset of it before. And to reframe the situation in a positive way of growth and opportunity and not of fear and protectiveness. So if you come to class and you say, mock exams, and they're all like shaking and they're thinking, okay, this is going to predict my outcomes, it does in a way, but it is also a tool to make sure that you have better results for the real exams. So if you share for them to say, okay, this is the time to fail. If you want to fail, you fail now, you fail good. And then we look back and we realize, what did you fail on? Why did you fail? And how can we make sure that you don't fail during the real exam? So this is an opportunity to take failure as a lesson, and it's a good lesson. And if they go into that mindset, into the mock exam, to say, we're practically doing a exploratory exercise of how I can do things better next time, they're going to have a very different mindset to it, and they're going to feel possibly that's more of an opportunity than either a chore or something really, really stressful and really, really scary. Catastrophizing exercises are a typical cognitive behavioral therapy tool. And what you do is you practically ask them, what is the worst thing that could happen? And they might say, the worst thing that could happen is that I forget my questions. Okay, and what happens if you forget your questions and the worst thing happened, you forgot your questions? Yeah, I'll fail the exam. What happens if you fail the exam? Yeah, I'll think that I won't be able to do the next exam. And then you kind of unpack that and you say, okay, so now you failed the mock exam. you miss your questions. Okay, what can we do to make sure you don't miss those questions? And even in catastrophizing, so what the problem with anxiety is, often it is felt as unsurmountable. So the fear of failing is in their heads as the end game practically. There's nothing beyond that. And a catastrophizing exercise just shows that while it is extremely unpleasant, it is painful, and it will have effects on your life, it is not the end of times. And if you fail the mock exam, doesn't mean that you fail the actual exams. If you fail the actual exams, doesn't mean you can't repeat it. If you can't repeat it, doesn't mean that you can't be happy in a different area of life. So it takes the pressure off of this one event and practically kind of deflates it down to its real place in their lives. And now I don't want you to think that, like, say, who cares about exams, they can just do something else with their life. That's not what I want. But there will probably be students in your classes where you say, you want them to get ahead in life, but this might not actually be the best thing for them. There are other things that you could see them do better, and why you don't want to put any roadblocks in their way, opening up the door to a mindset that would be not like, oh gosh, I failed my life, but actually, okay, this is an opportunity to see that there's something better out there for me, is an exercise that I think a lot of students would benefit from. One of the very powerful tools for the mock exam is to have a journal. So you journal what you do to study. How do you study? What does it look like? What are you eating? How are you sleeping? What did you learn? Then you write an exam, you write a journal entry about what did you feel like during the mock exam? What did you go through? So you're practically phasing. So I felt this, I read this question. Then I remembered I had seen it, but I didn't study it because I thought it wasn't important. And I got a flash of, a heat wave of anxiety. And then I did this. Because then at the end, if they were to fail, you can go back to the journal and you can say, okay, where can we make something more efficient? Like maybe studying until 4 a.m. the day before or the night before isn't so helpful. Maybe we can, you study until 12 and then you still get 7 hours of sleep or 6 hours of sleep or something like that. Maybe waiting with the difficult question till the very end so that you can concentrate on the ones that you're better at will lower the stress level than being stuck on a difficult. So you go through the journal with them and you're able to kind of deconstruct what happened and then look for places that you can do better. Then also making space for anxiety, because anxiety is actually a very helpful and important tool. And it is there to show us that there is something that needs special care. It needs caution. It needs our attention, right? So if we are anxious about a mock exam, it's because it's important to us, and it's okay to be anxious, and it has its place there. And it would be absolutely crazy if we didn't study and we weren't anxious, right? Then there's a misalignment. So anxiety, while we're trying to fight it all the time, is not necessarily a bad thing. And being able to communicate that with the students and say, like, if you're standing in front of a bus coming and about to hit you and you're not anxious, then something's not going so well in your head. It's a good thing to be anxious. It's just what you do with that and how you mitigate it. That is the issue practically. And then do self-efficacy exercises, like things like, what was something that you do in your free time that you're really good at? And then they'll say anything, skateboarding, they'll say rapping, they'll say knitting, taking care of my mom, babysitting, whatever it is. And then you ask them, was there a time, or what was the time where you almost failed, or you failed? And then what did you do to overcome it to become as good as you are now? And then all these stories will open up, and you and they will understand that they have a lot of self-efficacy. They're very powerful, and that they can transmit that tenacity or that love to detail or that passion to completely different things in their lives. And that is a resource that they have access to all the time. And that is also a very powerful tool. So that mindset to say, if I can manage at 16 to babysit 4 twins, then I can manage a mock exam. It's very easy. I have to concentrate. I have to do this and this and this, and I know I have the tools to be able to do that. There's a lot of research around studying, and it's a deeply personal experience, and then everybody has varying levels of intelligent knowledge, cognitive abilities, space to study, time. Sorry, my toddler is a bit unhappy, as you may hear. He's learning resilience right now. But there are a few things that you can do that are research and evidence to have a positive impact on studying and being able to remember the things that you studied when you need them. One of them is very strong, is taking notes by hand. If you're in the class and you're taking the notes, and there are subjects, for example, if you as a tutor say it's really, really important that you learn about this one specific fact or these 5 specific facts, tell everybody, put their laptops, the iPads to the side, bring out their paper and write that down by hand. And then maybe write a couple of questions, because there is a physical connection between writing and memory. And it practically is a mix of motor memory and cognitive, what do you call it? Description of what you're doing that is much more likely to stay in your mind. So taking important notes by hand. Then a lot of young adults will say, okay, I'm going to study all day and then late into the night, and then they drink Red Bull, and then they've done 6 hours of studying and they will remember about a fourth of that. The brain is not meant to learn the way that we are learning nowadays. The brain is meant to learn through narration, storytelling, and through play. We're not supposed to read textbooks and remember facts. That's not what we're built for, but we can still do it. And if we do it a certain way, the probability that we'll remember it is much higher. Tell them not to study more than 90 minutes at one time. And if once they've done their 90 minutes, they have to take a 2 to 3 hour break before they do the next 90-minute session. Otherwise, it's going to be in their brain, it's going to do a swirl around, and then it's going to go out again. Of course, we're talking about the general population. There's going to be a student who can study 6 hours and remember everything. There are people who look at a page and they remember what's on the page. I'm talking about the general population. Then after you've studied, taking a short nap or doing a protocol, which is practically a deep relaxation protocol where you just breathe, you lay there and you just relax, makes it much more likely that your brain is able to transmit what you've just learned into long-term memory, which will last long enough to be able to get through the exam, maybe a couple of years past that. So taking a short break, a 2 to 3 hour break, and then taking a nap during that 2 or 3 is the best they can do. Chewing gum during the time they're studying and at the exam is proven to be quite powerful to remember, to help people remember. And there's just a thing about the way chewing and being evolutionary psychological being, that eating is so rewarding and it's so important for us to survive, that if we chew while we're doing something, that we're much more likely to remember it. That's why when we, for example, go for dinners with people, we remember the conversations we had, we remember the feelings we had with these people. It's something special. So chew gum while you're studying, chew gum at the exam. And then there's a lot of research that shows that studying while listening to calming music will allow you to relax, sort out other stimuli, and be able to concentrate on what you're studying and remember it much more. So these are a couple of tricks that you can share with your students, and just give them along the way and say, okay, if you stick to this, the likelihood that you'll do well at the exam is much higher. Of course, then you have to study, right? You can't just do it once and then it's not repetition. When students experience test exams, test anxiety, and the stress before a mock exam period and the exam period, there's a lot more stress in their lives than there usually is. And in comparison to 20 years ago, they already have a lot more stress than they had 20 years ago, right? So young adults shouldn't be having to deal with stress management, but they do. And there are quite a few things that they can do that are really powerful. Managing sleep is the strongest, best, most effective thing a teenager can do because they have the highest sleep needs, but happen to have some of the worst sleep practices. And being on your phone or on your computer studying the night before an exam or the nights before an exam is going to be really, really harmful for them physically, mentally, and also from a knowledge standpoint, being able to perform at the exam. So if there's something you can tell them is the best thing you can do for a mock exam other than studying is sleeping. And just look at sleep hygiene. No blue light before going to bed. If you have to be on your phone, and most of us are, even if we shouldn't be, get blue light glasses. You need at least 8 hours of sleep if you're a teenager, preferably 10, but that's not always manageable. Make the room dark. Don't have like the TV going on or the curtains open and the lights from the streets blaring in. No stimulants after 2 p.m. Don't drink coffee at 4, 5, 6, 7 o'clock. That's going to have an impact on your nervous system, your ability to remember, to study, to concentrate, and to sleep, which of course then has another impact on the ability to sleep. And keep the room as cold as possible. We are meant to sleep in cold spaces, of course, warmed up. There's a couple of little tricks that are quite helpful for the moment of experiencing stress. And one of the most powerful one is called the physiological sigh. So what you do is you breathe deeply. And then on top of that, after you feel like you're full of air, you do another gasp of air. So you go, and you do that 4 or 5 times. And that has proven to have a significant impact on your heart rate variability, which has an impact on your stress, your ability to deal with anxiety, and it just calms your whole body down. That is one of the best things you can do. Do it 4 or 5 times, and that already has an impact on your well-being. Like when I'm presenting in front of a crowd, shakes, I do that 4 or 5 times, and I'm already calm. I can physically see that impact. Staring into space, strangely. So if you're sitting in class and you see your students go, and they're just looking into space, especially if they're looking out of the window into the vastness, that actually has an impact on their well-being as well. So it's actually a good thing for the eye not to focus on something directly for you. This is why another reason why we should be in front of computers all day. Meditation, if they're into anything like Calm or Headspace or something like that, really tell them this is the best time to do it. Do it every morning after waking up, during the day, maybe after they have their 90-minute session, meditate, get that app, or maybe do it with your class if you want to, do a meditation exercise and just kind of like calm everybody down, explain to them what meditation does, how it's okay to have thoughts, just not to hang on to them, let them just float around, allow them to experience meditation. Exercise is really, really good. Exercise is one of the biggest things after sleep for mental health. So if they like to go for a run, if they exercise, if they go dancing, if there's anything, preferably outside, but if not, just exercise itself is really good. So if they say, oh, I can't exercise, I can't go to the gym today, or I can't play football or something because I have to study, try to still do that because it'll have an impact on your mental well-being. Progressive relaxation is really good, especially for people who are unaware about their stress levels, or they know they feel stressed, but they don't know what their body is doing. So for example, when I'm very stressed, I pull my shoulders up to my ears. I'm like on my keyboard like this, and then I wonder that my shoulders are full of lumps, or I pull my forehead up, or like chew on my lip. And progressive relaxation is practically just a body scan where you go through your body and you flex your toes really hard, and then you let it go. You flex your calves really hard and you let it go. And you work your way through your body, and you realize while you're doing it that half of your body was flexed before you even flexed it because of the stress. So your tummy will be flexed, your arms will be flexed, your shoulders up, or something like that. And that allows you to let go of these tensions, and it has a beautiful effect on your well-being. And then studying with friends, and I have a point to that a little bit later, but studying with people and being able to explain something to someone who hasn't understood it, being able to discuss something that you haven't understood, and look at different study styles from a different, has a wonderful impact on knowledge and being able to keep the knowledge and being able to have access to it when you need. Handling setbacks. Okay, so you've done all the preparation for the mock exams. They know all about anxiety. They've done all the exercises. They've slept well. They've studied 90 minutes and then taken a break. And then there's 3 or 4 that just failed the mock exam and they did really poorly and they're completely distraught. Now there's a couple of things that you can do with them. And I think that this is a really important time to have one-on-one with them and to really kind of check in what is happening there. As a repetition to what we said at the beginning, if someone comes to you and they're completely distraught and they say, I've missed it by like 5 points, or, what should I do? My future is over. Hit them with a good and see what they're like, what's happening? Just say, you failed, beautiful. Now we have a lot of tools that we can implement that we haven't implemented properly. We can have a look at everything. We can dissect it. We can explore what went wrong, and then we can do it better. And we know, because if you just barely managed, you didn't fail, you barely managed it, how much do you learn, right? So failing comes with a lot of opportunity to be able to do things better and implement the learnings that you had from failing. Like, what did you do? Like I said, yeah, I didn't actually sleep the 3 days before, or, I didn't read the book, or, you told me to write down these 4 things and I didn't, and I completely forgot. Things like that. So they will be leaving with a tool set after possibly discussing the mock exam journal with you, that they can just say, okay, I have like 5 things that I can change that will have an impact on the exam. So that's something empowering. And then also defining the meaning of failure. So there is, to every emotion, there is an appraisal, and sometimes there is a secondary emotion that comes with that. So when they fail, what does it mean? What does it mean to them? A lot of times it will be, my parents are going to be angry. My parents are going to be disappointed. But what is it? I'm scared of disappointing my parents. What does that mean? Who are you as a person? How can you speak with your parents in order that they support you and don't beat you down? Is there a way, is there a person who you can go to get the support that your parents might not have the capacity to give you? If your parents are fine, is there some kind of evaluation? Is it connected to your self-worth that you have good grades, or that you studied this one subject and nothing else? And what does that mean? So being able to have a sit down and say, okay, what does this mean? What does it feel like? And then being able to kind of process those emotions, get them out of the way, and go back to the tool set that they now have and say, okay, this is what it means. Challenge your beliefs about those emotions, what that meaning is for you. But in the meantime, you don't have to worry about that. Let's go and look at the tools that you have. And tapping into resources is one of the main elements of resilience, to say, what are my resources? And resources can be anything. It can be a place where you can study. Say, like, I was studying at home. I have 7 siblings. We live in a 2-room apartment. That doesn't work. Where can I go? I can go to the library. The teacher can give me the class to that little room that has 1 desk and is super quiet twice a week. So I can do that. I can go speak to my teacher. I can find a mentor. I can speak to a friend that I didn't speak to ask me to. All these resources that they have, that they can tap into, that they might not have tapped into before, but now it's time at the latest to tap into. Preferably they're already doing it, but if they're not, there's so much more that they can do for resources. So it's really looking at it and saying, okay, great, now we have a recipe that doesn't work, and then we're going to look at what can work. Next slide, please. So motivation and motivational psychology is a big thing, and it's really, really tricky. And the world is not built to support motivation of things that aren't like dopamine linked, right? So the world isn't set up to keep us healthy and balanced and focused. No. So it's really, really hard. But there are a couple of things that you can do that works, not with everyone, but with the most people. And motivation and dedication is often not just a mindset or a skill, but it is the removal of temptation. So a lot of the times, if you look at people who don't snack, who are living healthy, what they don't do is they don't go into the places that sell unhealthy snacks, or they don't interact with that little aisle right before the cashier with all the candies. They don't even process that, because if that same person who doesn't snack looked at a Snickers long enough, they might buy a Snickers, right? So removing temptation, being able to look at students and say, you need to study your 90 minutes. What is stopping you? The TV, their smartphones, their friends calling, their dog wanting to go on a walk. Remove all of that. Put on all your notifications on silent. Best put the phone in a different room. Turn off the TV. Go into a room that is like a box, and no, there's nobody distracting you. Remove temptation to be able to get through with the things that you need to go through. Communicate your needs, wishes, and challenges. So if a student doesn't like a topic, but they have a wish or they have a need that is often linked, but they're not aware of that. So let's say someone is studying beauty, or they love languages and they hate math, or they love math and they hate languages, or something like that. If we are able to understand what their wishes or needs, or the things that they enjoy are, that sometimes we can bring a connection. So as a clinical psychologist, I'm really, really bad at math. Like, I almost think I have dyscalculia. But knowing that, being able to get through statistics, which is like 40% of studying psychology, would allow me to be a better academic, better research, and understand what other academics are doing, made me crawl my way through statistics and come out with my master's degrees. So understanding that and what the challenges are is extremely helpful for being able to set the scene, so to speak. Developing a goal list or a schedule. The problem for a lot of people is they never studied. Now the mock exams are coming up, and they need a different skill set. You can't just go boom, okay, now I'm going to study every day, all day for the next 3 weeks. You have to set up a schedule that is a step-by-step that you can motivatedly get on board with. So rather start reading the text from class 8 weeks before for half an hour than reading the book the day before, and setting that goal list with a schedule in place with them to say, okay, what kind of contract can we make together that you're actually going to adhere to? Then the sucking it up. In a way, there's going to always be something that is absolutely terrible about something that you love to do. So my company, I love to do my company, but compliance, is really horrific. But you have to do compliance. It's a part of it. And when I've done my checklist and I've done my exercises and I've updated all the things that I need to update, I find I'm very proud of myself because I did something absolutely horrific and I managed to do it. And it's being able to suck it up, being able to get through it, and just make it happen is something that will fill you with pride. And having done that once or twice is going to help you do it a third and a fourth and a fifth and a sixth time. So if you help them or you handhold them doing it once with something, and you say, remember that time you did this and you went really well with it and you hated every step of the way, but it allowed you to do that, and that's kind of it. Then finding a mentor. Having someone in the school, be it a teacher, a tutor, maybe someone from an external, like a Big Brother program or another student or something like that, to help them stick to like the step or the goal list is really important. You are who you eat with. The people that you hang out with, your inner circle, is going to have a huge impact on how motivated you are, how goal-oriented, how you are dealing with anxiety and everything. And it's really important that students have a look at themselves and their inner circle and say, does my best friend, when I tell her or him that I have to study for 90 minutes, say, you go girl, I'm not going to text you, put your phone on mute? Or do they say, oh, come on, let's go to the market around the corner, or let's watch Netflix or something? And that will tell you if that group might need a little bit of adjustment, and to find people that will support you and maybe have similar habits as you. And then last but not least, self-compassion, because you can have done all these things and still, not study that one day or that one week. And there are times that you can't manage, and being self-compassionate will allow you to then bounce back and try it again. And not, if you attack yourself and say, oh, I'm not good for nothing, what are you going to do? You're not going to do anything at all. So self-compassion and understanding and saying, okay, you can have a bad day, you can have a bad week, and that's okay, is really important too. Yeah, that's me on a good hair day. And now I think we're opening up to Q&A, and please throw everything you have at me, challenge me, ask me anything, share your own experiences. I want you to be able to take something home and say, okay, I didn't just waste 40 minutes of my life.
Somebody has just asked if you could go through the exam journal again. They missed it.
Exam journal, yes. So it's practically just like a normal journal or a thought journal. A cognitive behavioral therapy journal is where you journal your experience around the mock exam. So practically when you start preparing for the mock exam, you journal like, how much are you sleeping? How much are you studying? What are you studying? What does it feel like to study? What are your challenges? All these kind of things up to the actual exam. And then you journal and you report how the exam felt. Like, what did you do first? You read it first, then you started with this part, then you felt really anxious, then you did something else. And try to have it as nuanced as possible for during the exam, and then quite general before and after. Because then once you have a mock exam, you can, at the end, you can see if someone wants to have a better grade at the exams, or if they actually failed or something, you can go back and you can say, oh, I saw that in the 4 weeks before the mock exam, I went on 5 parties, and I slept over with my boyfriend 10 times, and I didn't sleep very well. And I think for the actual exams, I'm going to stay home the week before, and I'm going to try to get my 8 hours in. Or during the exam, they said they started with the most difficult question, and they really bit their teeth out on it for half an hour, and then they got really anxious about the rest of the question. So maybe leave the difficult question for later. And these are things you can look at them together and say, okay, all this knowledge will help us do better the next time. So that's a mock exam journal.
Thank you, Silja. And just another one that's come through. If you have a student who's gone into a full-on panic, what can you do to calm them down?
So full-on panic is practically when the amygdala takes over and they can't process anything anymore. And then you can do a lot of exercises that are very similar to a proper panic attack. So I would probably start with the sigh. So you do the deep breath, and then you top it up. You do it 4 or 5 times. And you do that 4 or 5 times. And then you tell them, okay, find 5 yellow items in the room. And you practically force the brain to switch from the amygdala into the prefrontal cortex with something very simple. So they're looking for colors. So they look and they give you the 5 colors. Then you sit in and you say, okay, how are you feeling right now? And then last but not least, I would say, when was the last time you felt like this and you still managed to get through with it? And they'll say, oh, that last time when I was, on stage playing my guitar. I said, you did it, you can do it now again. And then maybe do another time the the sigh. I'm sorry, this was 45 minutes and must have maxed out my speaking power.
Just one final question before we end the webinar for today. Are all the techniques that you spoke about today suitable for all ages?
They are suitable for all ages. The only difference I would make, for younger children, I would keep things maybe a little bit more broad and just do the exercises. For older teens, I would explain more why they work and how they work, because many times knowing what the mechanics behind, for example, heart rate variability is, or sleep deprivation or something like that, will allow them to take it more seriously and to appreciate that knowledge more and be more excited about it because they know more. And young adults actually want to learn. It's just there's a lot surrounding it that stops that from happening.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining us today. It's been really nice to know about the psychological techniques that we can implement for exams. We will be hosting a number of further webinars all around mental health, resilience, and mental well-being as well. So we will get in touch with you over the next few days with the recording of this webinar and some additional links that may be able to help you and your students, including some podcasts and some blogs. But for now, I'd just like to say thank you, everyone. Thank you, Silja. And hopefully we'll see you again soon.